Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to cut just a basic bodice. I'm going to simplify it for a beginner. So basically you're going to imagine this to be your fabric, right? You're going to take your fabric, fold it into two, and then the width that you're going to use to fold this is going to be basically the widest part of your body. Let's say it's your hip that is your widest part of your body, or your bust that is the widest part of your body. Whichever one is the widest part, that's when you measure round it, and the one that has the widest width is what you're going to use. Most times for some people is the hip. So the hip I'm working with here is 40 inches divided by 4 is going to be 10. I added extra 1 inch for my seam allowance, so I have 11. So that's why the width of this fabric I'm working with here is about 11 inches. But if it's your bust, let's say your bust is the widest, then use your bust. Basically, whatever is the widest, divide it by 4, and then add extra 2 inches or 1 inch for your seam allowance. So now the next thing I marked here is my shoulder to my bust, my shoulder to my waist, and then shoulder to hip. Most people, their shoulder to their waist is 16, but it depends. I'm going to insert how you're going to take each measurement. Your shoulder to your waist, and then some people, the shoulder to hip most times is like 24, 25. It depends on the person. So it can also be less. So I'm just going to insert how you're going to measure that. So after that, you're going to draw out the line, So this one here is the shoulder to the bust. Guys, now I'm going to go to this upper line now. I'm going to insert my shoulder measurement. So you're going to go ahead and measure the person's shoulder. So the shoulder I'm working with here is going to be about 15 divided by 2 is going to be 7.5. So I'm going to mark that here. And then I'm going to come in here and put in 3 inches is what they normally use for basic neckline. So 3 is most times 3 inches by 3 inches. So 3 inches of width and 3 inches of length. You're going to connect it like a square. And then you're going to go ahead and give it a curve this way. So this is going to be the neckline, right? This is going to be the neckline. So after that, you're going to come down on this mark that you made here by 1 inch for your shoulder slope, and then you're going to connect it to this 3 inches at this point here. So you're going to go ahead and connect it this way. After that, you're going to go ahead and insert your armhole line. So my armhole is 18 divided by 2 is going to be 9. So it falls also on the same line as this, my bust line. So I'm going to go ahead and mark a straight line down here all the way up, and then this is I'm going to go ahead and give it a curve. So guys, what I'm working with here is bust of 36, waist of 28, and hip of 40. That's what I'm working with. So waist, this is my bust, this is the waist, and then this is the hip. So basically each of these measurements I'm going to be dividing it by 4. And you see why I use my hip, because my round, the hip is the largest, so that's why I used it. Because if I use my bust, my hip measurement will not fit into this paper. So that's why you always measure around each of the measurements, your bust, your waist, and the hip, and figure out the largest number. That's what you're going to use as the fold of your fabric. You're going to divide that largest number by 4 and add extra 1 to 2 inches to it. That's your seam allowance. So now the bust measurement divided by 4, which is 36, divided by 4 is going to be 9. I'm going to mark that 9 here, and then I'm going to come down to the waist. The waist measurement I'm working with is 28 divided by 4 is going to be 7. But at the waist here, I'm going to add extra 1 inch because I'm going to be darting it. So I'm going to add extra 1 inch. Now this is not my seam allowance, this is going to come in as my dart. And then the next thing you're going to measure in here is the hip, which is 40 divided by 4 is going to be 10. You always divide by 4, because remember, you're cutting your fabric on a fold of 2 for the front and on a fold of 2 for the back. So the 2 for the back, the 2 for the front, that's why you always divide by 4. So now I'm going to go in and put in my dart for the waist. So the dart for the waist, you're going to measure the nipple to the nipple measurement. So the one I'm working with here is about 7 inches divided by 2 is going to be 3.5. Most people is normally 8 inches, but this is a smaller size, almost medium size with a smaller bust. So you're going to measure her nipple to nipple measurement, nipple to nipple distance, and then divide it by 2. You're going to insert it here, and then you're going to go ahead, mark half an inch on each side of this line that you made, half an inch here, and also half an inch on this side, and then you're going to come down here 1 inch before your bust line. So if this is your bust line, you're going to stop 1 inch before that for the dart. So you see I stopped 1 inch before that, which is on this line. On the hip line, you're going to stop 2 inches before that. So my hip line is at 14 on this tape, but I'm going to stop 2 inches before that, which is on this 12. And then you're going to connect it on a straight line here, this way, go up this way, and then go down this way. And then what you're going to do now is you're going to connect this dart this way. So you're going to connect it, you're going to angle it to this half an inch on this side, and then you're going to also angle it half an inch on this side. The same thing for the top part here, you're going to angle it this way, and then you're going to angle it also this way to this point. So that's basically how you're going to do it. So this is now my dart. When you go to sew it, you basically just fold it this way and pinch it out. You're just going to fold it and pinch it out and make and sew the dart here. So you're just going to sew it in such a way that, so when you go to sew it, you're basically going to sew it down following this line, and then it's going to angle, it's going to look something like a bow when you're done. So now back to the placement. So now we've marked our dart. So the next thing you're going to do now is, remember you've put in that 1 inch, because if you measure this now, and if you measure this now without the, because you're supposed to add 1 inch for your darting, right? Because right now if you sew down this 1 inch of this dart, because remember you marked half an inch here, half an inch here, if you take it away you'll be left with just 6 inches. So that's why you always add extra 1 inch for your darting, and then extra 1 inch for your seam allowance, right? So now we're also going to go back to the bust line and add 1 inch for the seam allowance here. And then on the hip line, extra 1 inch for the seam allowance here. But you see on the waist, we added 2 inches because 1 inch is going to be gone when you dart it. And then you need extra 1 inch to replace that dart. And then extra 1 inch that is going to be your side seam allowance. So now, at the bottom here, always depends on you. It depends if you're trying to make something straight or if you're trying to make a pencil dress, right? So whichever one you're trying to make, if you're trying to make a straight dress, then you're going to insert the same measurement here down here, right? You're going to insert the same 40 that you got here is what you're going to bring down here. But normally you make a pencil dress. So what you're going to do is that 40 that you have here, you're going to subtract that 10 inches that you got after dividing the 40 by 4, you're going to subtract 1 from it. So 9 inches is what you're going to bring down here. Because remember, this part here is your hip, which is wider. But coming down to the end, which is where your thigh is, it narrows down. So that's why you always subtract 1 inch from the hip measurement here. So I'm going to put in 9 inches here, which is, I removed 1 from the 10. Because here is 10, I removed 1 from it at this end, so it's 9. I'm also going to add in 1 inch of my seam allowance here. So now you're going to come down here by 1 inch. You don't connect the line straight to this point, no, you always come down 1 inch, because if you connect this line straight to this point, it's going to give you like a pointy part at the hip. So it's going to be picking out. So you always bring down this part here like a straight line, and then after that straight line, then you can connect it down to this part. If you have your curve ruler, that's even better. So guys, now I'm going to join the waist to the hip, and then I'm going to join the bust to the waist, right? And then I'm going to join my seam allowances. So you see my 1 inch to this waist part here, and then also my 1 inch down to this hip part here. So you see, this is basically it. So if you have your curve ruler, it's better to use it at this lower part here, so it will give you a better curve here. But that's basically it for this part here. So this is it for the front part. But another thing that you have to do is down here on this your sleeve length, you're going to find halfway through. So I have 9 here. Halfway through of 9 is going to be 4.5. On this part here, you're going to come in here. Sometimes people use 1 inch, sometimes you use 0.75. I'm going to be using 0.75 here. You're going to mark the one here. You're going to connect it straight to this edge here in a straight line. And then the other one here is you're going to use a curve ruler for this other end here. So but I'm going to just use my hand and blend it in. But normally what you're going to use is a straight line above this way, and then a curve ruler for the other end. So guys, this is basically it. Our front bodice is done. With this front bodice, you're now going to trace the back bodice. You see how I drew in my armhole here? So basically, sometimes people just add half an inch at the shoulder here for your seam allowance, but I mostly don't do that. It depends on you. If you want, you can do this here. If you want, if you're cutting it directly on your fabric, you can just start from the very end of your fabric draw in your pattern. The only thing is that you're going to leave about 1.5 inch added to the length of the main body of the dress, so that you can use half an inch to join the shoulder and then 1 inch to fold the end. If you're using lining, maybe you can do 2 inches, half an inch here for the seam allowance, and then 1.5 for the end here. So that's basically it for the front pattern. I'm going to go ahead and cut out this part here, and then with this here, we're going to trace our back panel. We have cut out this part now. I'm going to go in here, cut out. I'm going to be cutting just with my back armhole. After tracing, I'm just trying to show you guys the easiest way to do this, right? I'm going to cut with the back armhole. When I'm done cutting the back, then I'm just going to go ahead and trace out this front armhole. So guys, I've gone ahead and placed my back bodice behind here. So now I'm going to use this here to shape out the side of my bodice for the back. So basically the only thing that will be the same here is just the side of this here. Using this front arm, the first armhole that I drew, remember I just drew down the line and gave it the armhole here. This deeper one is just for the front, but the first armhole that you drew is for your back armhole. So just like that, I'm going to go ahead, cut out this part like this. But before you cut it out, make sure that you've transferred all your line. As you can see, I've already drew in, followed this straight line to draw in my waistline, my shoulder to chest, and then my shoulder to my hip line. So I'm going to just go ahead and cut this part out. So guys, I've cut out this part of the back panel, and then remember your back is also supposed to have about 1 inch to 1.5 for your zip allowance. So you see I have a zip allowance here, so I've marked that here. So that's this distance at the center here. So now I'm going to take out this front pattern, cut out this my front armhole. Now that I've used it already to trace the back, I'm going to take it out, cut out this front armhole so that I can be able to dart the back panel. So you see the lines I was telling you guys to make sure you've drawn the line so that it will be easy to transfer your darting to this one here. So just transfer that same shoulder to your waist, shoulder to bust, shoulder to waist, shoulder to hip line, the 3 lines that you marked here, and then also include your zip allowance, cut out your armhole and cut out the side. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut out this front armhole now. Because your front armhole is supposed to be deeper than the back armhole, so that's why you always do this. So I'm going to cut this out now. So that's basically it. So this is my front panel done. So I'm going to also go ahead and cut out the neckline. So with the neckline now, you can go ahead and change whatever you want to change. You can make the front neckline deeper than this. You can make it a boat neck. Boat neck basically means the shoulder here, you're going to divide it by 2. Halfway through it here is going to be your new neckline. Then you connect it this way. So that's a boat neck. That means you're going to cut out all these parts. The same thing is what you're going to do for the back. From now onwards, you can manipulate this to whatever you want it to be. You can make it a one shoulder. Basically, that means you're going to open it up now, and then you're going to connect it maybe from here to here, and then now is a one shoulder. You can make it a halter neck, meaning from now here now you can come down maybe 3 inches from here, connect it to this part here, connect this one to this part here. Now is a halter neck. So from here you can just manipulate it as long as you've gotten the main body. So now we're going to go ahead and finish up the back pattern. So guys, now you're going to also go ahead and put in that same dart again. So the same 3.5, which is my nipple to nipple divided by 2. Nipple to nipple measurement was 7, divided by 2 is 3.5. I'm going to insert that here again on the waist, on the chest line, and then on the hip line. So all you have to do now is you're going to connect it. But how you're going to connect it, remember the one in front was 2 inches before the hip line. So you're going to come up 2 inches before the hip line here. It's never going to get to the hip line, but then the one for the back always goes up to the chest line, because remember we did 1 inch before the chest line in front, but here we are going to connect it all the way to the top. So you're going to connect it all the way to the top here, and then you're going to, but it's still the same for the hip part, 2 inches before the hip line, and then you're going to mark half an inch on this side, half an inch on this side, and then you're going to connect it just like that. So guys, for the back neckline, you always come down like 1 inch, except if there is a different, the basic back neckline, just come down by 1 inch and just connect it like that to where the angle of your front neckline is, like this. So that's basically it for the back neckline. So you're going to go ahead and cut that out. That's basically how you do it. And that's your basic bodice. So guys, And then sometimes if you want your zip to relax better, you can come in here by 1/2 inch for the zip part here. Come in at the waistline, that's for the zip allowance part. If you want your zip to relax better, come in 1/2 inch here. Connect it straight line all the way to the top here, and then straight line all the way to your hip. So that's how you're going to do it. So guys, as you can see, I've marked it out this way. So now all you have to do is to go back in and cut it out. Remember this here, you're going to be cutting 2 panels of this. So you have 2 panels for the back and 1 panel for the front. So you're going to go ahead and follow this line and cut it out. It will help your zip not to bulk up at the back. So guys, that's basically it.